Hey y'all, we're talking to Dan Alexander today. He is an expert on combining NLP and recruiting, and there is nobody else in the field doing this. Hey Dan,
Hey guys.
can you tell our audience just like what exactly NLP is? Because I'm sure they're like, what is this?
Okay, cool. So neurolinguistic programming is, NLP is neurolinguistic programming, right? Which is, it's essentially like a set of tools that have been created and adopted from lots of different therapy and different kind of areas of psychology. And the guys that created this technology, they've kind of figured out that success can be mapped, right? And it's all about the study of success. And it's all about the words that you use and how that affects the way that you think and feel, and then how that affects your results, right? So to give you like a real, like, I guess, layman's example, if I said to you, I'm going to go for a run, but it's raining outside, right? And I then said the exact same statement, it's raining outside, but I'm going to go for a run. Like, I've said the exact same words in a different order, and I've got two different outcomes. And that is neurolinguistic programming in action.
Oh, yeah. And like, that's just a total change up right there. It's like, I can't versus I can. So when it comes to using this in recruiting, because like, I mean, Todd and I have also studied NLP. So we know that there is like a plethora of tools, so many options. And so how can a recruiter use this in their business? Because obviously, Dan, this is exactly what you do and what you utilize.
Yes. So I'm a recruitment trainer, right? So I've built successful desks from scratch. I've built helped build and scale a startup from nothing to $1 million within 3 years. And I was the sort of the first recruiter into that business. And so it's, for me, the study of success is so applicable to starting a recruitment business, right? And like you say, there are so many different tools, and I think this is the whole thing, Kate. The reason why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I'm sort of talking and having these conversations is because I don't think there is really any real valid information out there that kind of shows you how to use these tools specific to recruitment. And for me, I've been looking at this stuff for the last sort of 10 years, last 7 years specific to recruitment. And I'm just still scratching the surface, and I'm thinking about this shit every day. There's so much to it. And the more conversations like this we have, and the more information we share, the more people will realize what tools and what methods they can use to drive their success.
I agree. There's actually, it's funny because like I'm a former therapist before I found recruiting, but like, you're right. There is really nobody talking about how to use what is literally the study of successful people and how to be successful, and to merge and marry that in the field of recruiting. So when you're training, because obviously you train recruiters too, what are some of the things that you find they really would benefit from knowing?
Yeah, that's really a great question, Kate. So from my side, I think especially recruitment is such a vast, if you're a recruiter, you can be at the beginning of your career, or you can be at the very, very, very end of your career, right? Or somewhere in the middle. And there's so much experience, and there's a knowledge gap in between that. I think there is no substitute for a great foundation in terms of the mechanics of how a deal works and how recruitment works. And I think the first thing I'd say about any of this stuff is that it's super fascinating. It's a rabbit hole that you can start to go down when you haven't got the basics down, right? So I think you need to have a foundation solid. So someone credible that's giving you the mechanics of how a deal works, whether you're a contract, your desk, or you're a perm desk, whatever you are. Learn from someone that knows their trade and learn well. And at that point, like once you've got the mechanics down, I think you can start to look at two different consultants, right? And they might have started in the same business or separate businesses at the same time, had the same sort of mindset, the same attitude, and the same work ethic, make the same amount of calls, target the same clients, and yet one person could build an incredibly successful business and the other person could build an average business. And it's not because of work ethic. And for me, it's about how they think. And it's about the words they say, how they say them. And it's about the order in which they do things. To give you an analogy, right? If you were a top Michelin star chef, or you worked at Burger King, right? You could have the same ingredients in front of you and they do things in a different order with a different mindset and a different technique. And you'd get two different results at the end of the exercise, right? So for me, it's understanding what works and what doesn't. I think the main thing I'd say to answer your question, what would they benefit from knowing? It's all about image, like self-image in my book. Like that is a core thing. And if you've got a poor self-image, I think you're going to really struggle in recruitment. I really do, because it will chew up and spit you out, sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to highlight this. The reason I'm agreeing with Dan right now is because rejection is kind of the name of the game in recruitment. And if you have a poor self-image and then you layer on the amount of rejection that you experience in recruiting, and if you're sensitive to that, so candidate doesn't want to connect with you, client decides they don't want to go with you. If you're not like clued into who you are and confident in your ability to navigate through that, then you can often falter and feel like I can't do this, or this isn't working for me. And you kind of get stuck in these like limiting beliefs and in this like mindset that really takes you off track, instead of realizing this is just part of life, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to pick up on one thing you said there, Kate, as well, I can't do this yet. That small word is the difference between hope and like failure. And it's like a 3-letter word. And it's just a small thing that you can add into your arsenal yet. I don't know this yet.
Dan,
I haven't achieved this yet.
To help this land more for people at home, because that's a really interesting, it's like, there's a lot of things that we say out loud and we're not monitoring what we say, and they're shaping our reality and our results. And like, just for everyone listening, the difference between I can't do that and I can't do that yet are two totally different realities. And having someone like Dan that can listen to you and noticing where your patterns are coming up and helping you recognize those and shift those. I know that, for me, I've had the same thing happen where I keep on, telling myself something or repeating myself. Like I know something that happened to me, during COVID, and something I was saying is like, oh, I'm back at square one, I'm back at square one. And I'm like, this is such bullshit. Like, you're not back at square one. Like, you've done so many things. Like, granted, some of those things, they took a hit during this thing that, a lot of people took a hit on. And just, having gone through NLP myself and being able to recognize that and recognize that I'm saying that to myself and it's shaping things in a not positive manner is huge. So I'm wondering for you, Dan, what are some ahas or just, small things that you've noticed recruiters doing or saying or, behaving in a certain way that you realize wasn't serving them? Do you have some examples of either things that you've done or said to yourself or you've heard?
Several examples, and I think limits and beliefs is a whole subject on its own, right? And there are so many different limits and beliefs in recruitment.
Yes.
And I think that's a really good place to start on this one. It's all the stories you tell yourself where actually they're distortions, they're deletions, or they're generalizations of the truth, right? This guy never answers the phone. Right? Well, he answered you the first time, so straight away there's something to challenge that reality, right? I'm not good at cold calling. It's like, well, yeah, because you've never done it, because you haven't established the skill in order to be successful. You haven't made enough cold calls yet, right? It could be, my boss doesn't like me. Well, how do you know? Oh, well, I was in a meeting and, he just got up and walked out when I was talking mid-sentence and didn't come back. I was like, okay, so what does that mean to you? oh, well, he doesn't like me. Well, hang on a minute. What else could have been true for that guy? Maybe he got a call from his wife, or, you know, someone was in a car accident. You don't know what the truth is. So I think it's understanding like what your truth is and what reality is. And I think that it's to Todd, it's a really interesting question, and it's one of the things that I see so many people don't know they're doing it. Like you're saying, you've got to like just catch yourself doing it. And I think working with a coach is definitely one way to fast track that, right? Because it's a skill recognizing your own self-talk for certain. So working with a coach or a mentor or someone that can spot those and just hold you accountable to what you're actually saying. And I think another thing for me is like, and I spoke to Kate about this before, I'm really big on like Milton patterns, which is again all about, so hypnotic rapport being attention and agreement, right? And if you had those two things, then, and you had enough subconscious rapport, you could actually start to pace, and then lead somebody. But you pace them subconsciously, right? So, and a lot of what we don't realize is that all the marketing around us and all the self-talk that we say is actually like hypnotic, and like words are like spells. So if you can understand those 20 or so patterns, I think that's a great place to start, Todd, in terms of understanding like, you know, the limiting beliefs and actually challenging distortions of reality. And a good one like might be maybe a conversation with a loved one where you're having an argument and they'll say, you always say that, you always do that, right? And obviously that's a massive distortion of the truth, because, you know, it's what we call a universal quantifier, right? Where it's like, right, it's you're wrapping everything out in your whole entire experience into that one sentence. And if you accept that, then that's powerful. So you've got to challenge that, and you've got to show experiences. So for me, understanding those set of patterns is key, absolutely fundamentally key, in understanding language, understanding influence, understanding your self-limiting beliefs, and understanding really how, you know, how language works.
This is really cool because you're actually giving people viable tools that they can start to pay attention to their language. Like you just went over some keywords there, like always, never, and how those can be clue-ins that like, hold up, pause. What are you saying to yourself? And like, here's why this is important fundamentally, guys. This is like, if you're going to go out and you're going to start your own startup, you need to start to check in with how you're talking to yourself so that you turn it around. Because if you don't think mindset plays a role in being successful, you're dead wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, right? So that's one set of tool, right? And there's another one. So like another one we can talk about is that let's give the viewers like a few things they can sort of take home and use in the
I love
today,
this.
right? So like, right, okay, so like a mind read, right? I know. Yeah. So and you can think, and this is the way to know if someone's buying from you or not, right? If they challenge you, what you say here, they're not buying from you. So if you said like, look, I know you get a lot of these calls, right? Or I know that you're curious to find out about the opportunity that I've got in front of me to talk to you about today. And they turn around and go, how do you know? Like, well, how do you know that? Then they're breaking rapport and they are not buying from you. So you know you've got a lot of work to do when you're selling, right? Now, another one we can talk about, which again, these kind of, a lot of them go together in everyday language, and you'll start to recognize these patterns if you hear them now. Presupposition is a great one. So one of the really powerful things I like to do in a call is presuppose that we're going to have the conversation. So I'll say, look, before we get into more depth on this, or, you know, after you and I have spoken through the opportunity, or once we've spoken about this, and there's a presupposition there that we will have the call, right? After you've spoken to me, you'll know that I'm not the same as all the other recruiters out there, or you'll understand that these opportunities are not your everyday run-of-the-mill opportunities, right? And this is just like, you know, just like 2 or 3 patterns. Other things, again, another one, right? And all these tools as well, that like they just work, right? Now, one thing that I think goes hand in hand with this is ethics. Like this next one is a great example, which is the, I guess, embedded command or negative suggestion, right? Where you'll say, don't think about pink elephants, you think about pink elephants. So if you're like, don't think about the money that you're going to make in this opportunity, think about the long-term growth potential, you're thinking about both, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it can be quite manipulative and you can be quite suggestive, which is like, so these tools just work. And it's, I guess, the thing is, I'd say is if you're not a good person, please don't use this stuff, because but how do you monitor that? Like you can't police the world, right? You can only give out knowledge in good faith and hope that people are going to do right with it.
Absolutely. And I think you're really like, what we're talking about is like, we're asking you to please be mindful of how you're going to communicate with people. But fundamentally, like we're really getting at like, I mean, Dan, that was like so artfully done. Like, I know, like presupposing, like, I know we're going to go deeper. I know we're going to have another conversation. Like these are such like key little language things. And he's right. If someone interrupts you, there's no rapport. So speaking of rapport, how do we get into rapport?
Yeah. So, there's again rapport. Like, okay, so let's define what we mean by rapport. So what is rapport? Rapport means different things to different people. So when I talk about rapport, I talk about sort of surface level rapport with someone that you've never met before. You know, if you were sort of just, you know, hanging around in your office and you saw someone walk by that you haven't seen in 10 years, but you went to school with them, you know, you could lean out the window and go, "Hey Jimmy, you're an asshole," right? And he would turn around and go, "Oh, hey Todd, man, how you doing, man? I haven't seen you in so long," right? If you did that to another stranger, then they would turn around and be like, you know, they might get quite aggressive with you. So that's deep rapport, right? And that's not a way to build rapport. So I'm talking about like surface level rapport. And when I talk about rapport, I mean attention and agreement. And if you don't have those two things, in my opinion, you don't have rapport with that person. So if you look at the scenario without one of those two things, if I've got your attention, but I don't have your agreement, we're kind of in a bit of an argument when you think about it, right? If you're not in agreement with what I'm saying, it's like, well, yeah, I disagree, right? So you're not buying from me. If I've got your agreement, but I don't have your attention, and you know, you're on your phone and you're saying, yeah, that's super interesting. Like, I do not have your attention. We are not in rapport right now because you're thinking, Dan, get off your phone, right? So I need you to be listening to what I'm saying, and I need you to be agreeing with what I'm saying in order to be suggestible. And there are different ways you can do that. You can do that consciously, you can do that subconsciously. But rapport for me, that's what I talk about when I'm talking about rapport. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreement and alignment, and really like being able to notice like if they're not engaged.
And even if, so you're on the phone, right?
Yeah.
You can't see someone, you can absolutely see them. I can see when I'm talking to you, right? And you're not listening to me. Like, you can hear it. Yeah. You can hear it in if you're talking to someone and you don't have their attention, you can hear it. You can hear when they're not engaged. So for me, I'm going to challenge that person, right? I'm going to challenge you, be like, look, I don't feel like I've quite gotten through to you here. Like, you know, what's going on? Or even in like written messages, like this stuff is so transferable. In a written message, if you send an email to someone or a message and an email and they don't come back to you, and you're saying this person is not communicating with me, well, the whole thing about NLP is you can't not communicate, right? Everything you say is a communication. So by you not coming back to me, you're communicating that my message isn't important to you. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to challenge you because I might have your agreement, but I don't have your attention. So I'm going to challenge you. Like, it might even be, I'll send you a question mark, and that's it. And it's like, that's enough to snap you back into, oh, I'm so sorry, Dan. Like, you know, busy, crazy. And that's quite I guess, that's quite an abrupt way of doing things. And there are subtler ways to get the same point across, right? But that's an extreme example for the point of this conversation. So for me, it's like, I think rapport is not just about being friends with someone, or like, oh yeah, it's a relationship, right? It's what everyone says. Well, why have another word for another for a relationship? Why just not use it for a relationship? So I think it's about changing the way that you think about certain things that you thought you knew about, but you don't.
let me ask you, Dan, viewing recruiting through this NLP lens, do you see some, generalizations or universal beliefs that are pretty common amongst recruiters that you've challenged? I'm just curious if that's come up for you, if you've seen, because sometimes people are like, you have to cold call, or I hate cold calling, or the candidate's always the candidate, and I was thinking as we were talking, I know one that comes up on the candidate side. So I'll always hear candidates, and you alluded to this earlier, I always hear candidates go, I'm bad at interviewing. And it's, you're not bad at interviewing, you just haven't done it that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if there's kind of general sayings or things. And the reason I'm saying this is people that are listening right now that are wanting to do recruiting or that are already doing it, it's like, maybe there are things that you've bought into that aren't serving you well.
Yeah. There are 1,000,001 of those. It's from my side. So what ones do I hear a lot? Okay. The CRM system slows me down. Okay. If you're going to build a business and you're not going to use a CRM system, you're an idiot. Excuse my, my blunt language, but that is going to serve you well, and you cannot beat a supercomputer with knowledge. Like you have to use the system. And I think that was one of the things that one of my own limiting beliefs, and probably one of the frustrations for, one of my first bosses, where I was like, oh, well, I can remember it. It's not making me money. It's like, well, why are these business leaders that are paying you money, or why are you investing in this technology if it's not going to return, right? So CRM system is one.
Okay, so I just want to highlight that for everyone who says the CRM system is slowing me down. That's a bunch of hot BS. It's like, this is a tool that allows you to perform better. Otherwise, men and women wouldn't have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on having this tool. It does not slow you down. It makes you more productive. All right, good.
Exactly.
Keep going.
It's right. Okay, so on that, it makes you more productive. It's like thinking, oh, this activity won't make me money, right? Oh, I just need to call candidates. I just need to call people. Like, why am I putting a list together? It's like, well, again, was it Thomas Jefferson that said, like, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend 4 hours sharpening my axe? Was it him? I'm going to credit it to him anyway. Yeah. Well,
Thomas Jefferson, right? For the win.
He'd end up with a tiny axe. But
yeah, tiniest axe, nothing left.
Chipping away.
God.
So no, he like that for me is the analogy. Like, if I'm going to spend like a bunch of time putting like a list together, well, when I'm then doing the activity, like, the whole reason you've done that is to enable your productivity, right? So that, again, is a limiting belief. Another thing, I guess it's not so much in line with the question, but it's on this topic as well. I can't make enough calls in the day, or like, there isn't enough time in the day. I think that's actually a massive limiting belief. And that for me is the number one thing around a successful business or a successful recruiter versus an average recruiter. How much time are you wasting? Like, and I mean, like, I'm talking about like mere seconds, mere minutes, but all those seconds and minutes add up. And it's like death by 1,000 cuts, right? If I'm working through a project on LinkedIn, right? I've done my project, I've done my search, and maybe I come back to another project, and I click on LinkedIn, and I click on my CRM system, I click on that guy's LinkedIn, I go into it, I wait for the page to load, I look up and down his profile, and I think, oh yeah, I remember this guy, and oh look, I've got a LinkedIn message from someone else. Oh, Dave came back to me. Oh, better message him back. And all this, like, you're wasting your time, right? If you put the project together, trust in the work that you've done previously, and if it comes to doing your pipeline generation, your PG, your cold calling, or your emailing list or whatever, trust the work that you've done previously, and then go hell for leather on getting down that list, right? Because a lot of the time I find people don't answer the phone, right? So if you spend a minute looking at a guy's profile, you click on his LinkedIn, and then you look at that, and then you tell yourself a story of like, oh, well, I better call this guy now. Okay, this is what I'm gonna say to him, and yeah, he was here, he's here, like, or she was there. Okay, cool, and call him, and then you get the answer machine. I've just wasted 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got a list of like even 30 candidates to do, most of those people are not going to answer the phone to you, or most of those people aren't going to come back to you on email. So you've got to find a strategy that maximizes your time. So for me, like, I don't have enough time in the day is a huge one, Todd. Like, that is probably the biggest one, you know, especially in recruitment where you're trying to spin so many plates.
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to share that come from listening to you, Dan. So two things. Number one, when I work with Kate, I've said again and again, you don't do laundry one sock at a time. And the reason I say that is you need to batch things, because the most wasted time is switching between them. And so I'm like, if you're going to do your candidate calls, or you're going to do your client calls, you get geared up, you get it planned. So I'm pretty big on the night before, you know, planning out the next day, like what are the big things that I'm going to move, and I'm going to focus on those. And that's one thing that's been really helpful. And then another thing is actually from Kate. So Kate has been pretty instrumental in my life, mainly by dragging it down, but also by sharing this, which has been very helpful. So she always talks about intent. And it's something that we don't really talk about in the recruiting space, but she is really good about, so I'm good about batching, and she's adopted that. And what I've adopted from her is she's like, you should set your intent for what you're doing. Like, what is your intention behind this? And I'm like, well, I'm just trying to do all these things. He's like, no. Set your intention. Like, be very clear on what your focus and what your intent here is, because a lot of people just kind of like half-ass it. And I'm like, okay, I am very clear. Like, let's say, yesterday, I'm very clear that I'm focused on finding a new client that's in alignment with me. Not just finding any client, finding a client that is in alignment. Like, that is my focus. That is my intent. Or on the other side, when I have a great client, I'm like, okay, what's my intent? I know this person. I care about them. I care about their company. I am setting my intent to find them the right person. And that sounds kind of cheesy, but it's like, it makes all the back and forth and all the other things fall to the wayside, because I'm very clear of like, oh, you're not in alignment with this. You're not in alignment, because I'm clear on my intent. So I just, from listening to you, Dan, sharing about the limiting belief, which I think is very powerful, of it's not that you don't have enough time, you do have enough time. And two things I found to really help that are not doing laundry one sock at a time, batching it together, and then being very clear. And this comes from Kate. Kate, thank you for the one thing that you've actually taught me, which is setting your intent and your focus. And that's been really powerful when I saw what Dan was saying, which is, I don't have enough time. I saw myself saying that. So if you're listening and you hear yourself say that, those are two really good things to help counterbalance that. And I'm done.
Yeah. Just to I guess to galvanize what you're saying, there's an exceptional book called The One Thing by a guy called, I think it's Gary Keller, I think his name is, from memory. And that's what he says, that multitasking is an illusion.
Get it out of here.
Yeah. So it's about omnifocus and doing one thing and one thing well. So I mean, again, we're from different sides of the world right now. So obviously I'm in London, you guys are in California, and yet the message is the same.
I know, isn't it powerful?
Something in that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as much as like, okay, so like women are notorious for multitasking, but like the truth is, like, when you put your full attention on something, that is where your energy flows. And like, we really want, like, you don't, like, yes, in recruiting, you said this beautifully, like, we have multiple plates spinning. Of course we do. Where's your attention now? Because that's where your energy is, and then don't also forget about putting your energy towards the things you're headed to. And this is really cool, because like so much of NLP is is success. So it's like where you are right now, for those of you who are like, you know what, I'm really liking recruiting, I want to get started. Trust and know that you are capable of getting there, and you will. And like Dan's obviously giving you some really fantastic tools. So if you're interested in connecting more with Dan, I know he's got a free gift. Dan, what's your free gift?
Yeah, so I'm launching or relaunching my podcast, and so I want you guys to check that out. Obviously, the link will be below, down. So
just below
that,
us, it'll be a button. It's in blue. Enjoy it. Click it.
Yeah, I guess just to sort of summarize the whole point of why we're talking, why we're having this conversation as well. Just like, neurolinguistic programming is fascinating to me, right? And it's universal. And Tiger Woods, Oprah, Tony Robbins, like all these guys have all, and like you say, it's so many people have used this technology before us. We're standing on the shoulders of the giants, but it's so universal. It is so universal. It's like saying you want to be a plumber, right? And someone says to you, okay, well, you need to go out and get the toolkit from the Home Depot store. And you get home, and the guy in the Home Depot store says, right, okay, this is the hammer. The hammer is for hitting things with, and this is how it works, right? And this is the wrench, and this is what the wrench does. And then you get to be your first day on the job, and someone that's been doing the job for 20 years goes, oh no, you don't need any of that shit. Throw half of it away, and what you need is this, right? And these are the tools, and this is specific to how you use it for this specific job. And I think that's a great analogy for what I'm coining recruitment cybernetics, which is I guess the study of a system to get you to a destination, right, within recruitment. So it means to steer, literally. Kubernetes, the Greek word to steer. So that's what this is all about. It's about NLP exists, and you can go and learn about it. And I'm sure you guys would advise as well. Mm-hmm. Go and do the foundation. Go and do the practitioner. Go and do the master prac. Go and learn this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But just learning it doesn't mean you're going to be able to apply it to your trade. So what I'm trying to do, and these conversations, and I hope that you guys will join me on my mission, is to help people understand how you use these tools, how the wrench is used specifically for the car in this specific scenario to get what you need to get done. And that is the power, of this technology.
I love that. And what's the biggest takeaway you want to leave our audience with?
Oh, the biggest takeaway. Okay. I would say my biggest takeaway is that I think it's to really echo on what you've said, Kate, earlier, is if you think that mindset is, if you think that it's not important, then you're really, I guess, you're missing a trick, because how you think about stuff, the way you think, the words you use, the way you talk to yourself, the way you listen to yourself affects everything, not only in recruitment, but in your life. And I personally have benefited like hugely from this. Todd, you and I were talking earlier about just the difference between and but. So this is life-changing stuff. It really is. So go and check it out. Come to your own conclusions. But certainly if anyone wants to talk to me about this stuff as well, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll happily have a conversation with you about, the way that sort of I see things as well.
So cool. I'll make sure to drop that in the bio, so you guys can just kind of scroll past the button, and you can find a link to Dan's LinkedIn profile too.